There's a truth nobody likes to admit. Sometimes, the chaos in your life doesn't come from the world. It comes from the people you let in. And the most curious thing is that you don't need to yell, argue, or dramatically distance yourself to change that. You just need to set a silent boundary. Yes, silent. And that's where many people freeze, because they grew up believing they only get respect when they speak loudly. But the reality is quite the opposite. Toxic people can't stand losing the easy access they had to you. And when they realize your energy has changed, they disappear on their own. No fight, no friction, no drama. Perhaps you're experiencing exactly this right now, feeling like you always give too much, that you wear yourself out for people who wouldn't do half as much for you, that you carry on conversations that drain you, that you become an emotional refuge for people who would never welcome you in the same way. And, deep down, you know you need boundaries, but you don't want conflict. You don't want drama. You don't want to become the villain. The good news: there's a quiet, elegant, and powerful way to do this. But it's so counterintuitive, so different from what everyone preaches, that it can completely change the way you relate to others. What if I told you that by adjusting your behavior, not your words, you can filter your entire life? And that this happens quickly, almost like magic. Today, you'll understand exactly how this silent boundary works, why it pushes away those who harm you, and most importantly, why it attracts lighter, more balanced people who are more aligned with your new energy. And at the end, I'll leave a video that helps you take the next step. Just click and watch. The silent boundary is almost like an internal adjustment a person makes without telling anyone, but it completely changes how they deal with toxic people. It doesn't require speeches, explanations, or confrontations. It's simply a change in behavior that, being so simple, goes unnoticed by outsiders. It's that turning point where the person stops wearing themselves out trying to be understood and simply reorganizes their energy. Boundaries cease to be spoken and become lived, which greatly bothers those who previously had easy access. It's like changing your Wi-Fi password without warning. Those who were used to entering without asking suddenly can't anymore. And this new energy creates a natural filter that only allows healthy interaction. Those who observe sense that something has changed, even without understanding exactly what. Many people think that setting boundaries means confronting, arguing, or putting the toxic person in their place. But silent boundaries work in the opposite way. They work precisely because they don't trigger any defenses. While a direct confrontation generates arguments, drama, and justifications, this boundary creates a calm distance where you stop offering what fueled the unbalanced relationship. Toxic people hate losing easy access, and your simple change in attitude is perceived by them as a block, even if you don't say a word. It's as if, suddenly, the automatic yes disappears. The absence of reward breaks the cycle that kept the dynamic functioning, and this begins to reveal, very clearly, when this boundary should have been set a long time ago. There's also an interesting neuropsychological side to all this. These people's minds work through reinforcement. When you stop offering energy, enthusiasm, or availability, their brains understand that it has lost its advantage, lost control, lost its shine. The perceived disinterest is enough to reduce the toxic behavior. It's the same principle as when you stop feeding an addiction. The absence of the stimulus weakens the pattern, and the best part is that this process doesn't create war. It only restores power. It's like turning off a tap that was dripping your energy without you realizing it. And when this movement begins within you, some signs become impossible to ignore, and they show exactly when this silent boundary is necessary. There comes a point when a person realizes, almost like a snap, that they are surrounded by toxic people who only approach them when they want something. It's always the same story. They disappear for weeks and reappear with that not-so-innocent, "Hey, how are you?" This pattern, repeated over time, shows that boundaries were never truly respected, because, in practice, they were never set. And these interactions leave clear signs, like that feeling of being emotionally used. When someone starts to notice that they talk to certain people and leave feeling emotionally drained, it's already a clear indication. It's like lending energy and never getting it back, and this prepares the ground for the deeper realization that follows. Another classic sign is when a person automatically becomes the problem solver for other people's problems. Everyone runs to them, but almost no one else does. She says, "I'm busy," but inside she feels guilty, as if she were responsible for saving everyone's day. This guilt, incidentally, is one of the biggest markers of a lack of boundaries. The person learns to prioritize everyone but themselves, and to try to avoid conflict, they still swallow small acts of disrespect that accumulate silently until they become a huge burden. It's that friend who asks for help at an inconvenient time, or that colleague who sends a message demanding immediate attention. Small but continuous situations that show something is wrong. And the good news is that all this changes when the silent boundary comes into play. And there's also the invisible wear and tear. The person doesn't even realize it, but their body and mind begin to react. They feel tired just seeing someone's name appear on the screen. They postpone responses because they know they'll come out emotionally diminished. They avoid conversations because, deep down, they already understand that they're never balanced exchanges. This is the body saying that toxic people are exceeding all internal limits. And these signs, when ignored, grow and become patterns that are difficult to break. But when recognized, they become the exact turning point. It is at this moment that the silent boundary becomes not only useful, but necessary. And when it is truly applied, the dynamic changes completely. In practice, the silent boundary isn't about talking less. It's about spending less emotional energy on toxic people. It's a subtle change, almost imperceptible to an outsider, but profoundly transformative for the person applying it. The person begins to respond more neutrally, without carrying emotions, without that automatic enthusiasm that fueled those accustomed to pushing boundaries. A simple example. Before they would respond to a 5-minute audio message with a 10-minute one. Now they respond with a short, direct, and polite text. There's no coldness, there's balance, and this completely alters the dynamic. Those accustomed to draining energy realize that access is no longer the same. The second pillar is reducing availability. This is when a person realizes they were saying yes, out of habit, not out of willingness. With this silent boundary, they begin to prioritize their own time and peace. Instead of rushing to solve a problem that isn't even theirs, they make it clear, through actions, that everyone has their own responsibilities. For example, if someone texts, "I need to talk to you urgently," before they would stop everything, now they respond, "I'll let you know as soon as I can." Small changes, but ones that communicate a lot. And they don't create conflict because they aren't hostile. They simply reposition internal priorities. And it is in this new place that boundaries begin to strengthen. The third pillar is internal reordering. You first, then others. This simple yet powerful logic corrects years of self-cancellation in the name of peace. It's not about ignoring anyone. It's about no longer sacrificing yourself. It's like adjusting your own oxygen before trying to help someone, a rule that works both emotionally and mentally. The person begins to notice that they can take a little longer to respond, can say, "I can't right now," can choose not to carry the emotional weight of others. And this silent change creates impact. Toxic people feel they have lost control of the narrative. And that's where something very interesting begins. When this boundary is applied, certain types of people simply disappear. When the silent boundary kicks in, the first to disappear is the energy vampire. This is the person who always arrived burdened with frustrations, throwing their emotions at you as if it were their duty to absorb everything. Without your available enthusiasm, they lose the emotional reservoir they used to use. Soon after comes the chronically needy person who only wanted constant attention, praise, validation, and without this daily supply, they naturally drift away. Toxic people of this type can't handle boundaries because they thrived on their excess. And along with them, the self-serving person also disappears because without easy access, without quick favors, without urgent answers, the advantage vanishes. And when the advantage disappears, they disappear too. Then comes the silent exit of the emotional manipulator. This one is the most sensitive to the silent boundary because they quickly realize they can no longer twist your words, turn situations against you, or use guilt as a tool. Without your emotional energy to manipulate, they lose ground. It's like taking the stage away from an actor. The show is over. And almost always, they try one last move, that passive-aggressive comment, that "I miss what we used to be," but without a response, it evaporates. Finally, the toxic competitive type can't stand seeing you well, centered, with firm boundaries. When they realize their provocations no longer throw you off balance, they lose interest. After all, competing with someone who doesn't play the game is pointless. The sum of these disappearing profiles reveals something very profound. The silent boundary doesn't expel anyone. It simply removes the privileged access these toxic people had. Without emotional energy to consume, without concrete advantages, without breaches in their boundaries, they simply migrate to another target. And the most curious thing is that, while these draining relationships fade away, other people, balanced, respectful, mature, begin to approach. This natural exchange prepares the perfect scenario to understand how to set these boundaries discreetly, elegantly, and extremely effectively. Applying silent boundaries is almost like adjusting your own emotional posture without needing to announce anything. They are simple but extremely powerful micro-behaviors. One of them is learning to respond more briefly when necessary, not out of coldness, but for balance. Instead of long explanations, the person says only what is essential. Another gesture is to stop justifying everything. There's no need to explain why you can't, nor to give a 3-minute audio drama. "I can't right now" is enough. These small adjustments begin to make it clear, without an explicit word, that your boundaries have changed. Toxic people feel the difference immediately. Another effective behavior is not rushing to solve problems that aren't yours. Before, people would drop everything to put out other people's emotional fires. Now they understand that everyone must carry their own bucket of water. If someone sends a message saying, "Help me now," the response can be calm. "As soon as I have time, I'll look into it." Small delays are also great allies, not responding immediately, not replying the second the message arrives. It's a silent message. Your energy is no longer for public use. And when you adjust this availability, your boundaries become firmer without any noise. The ultimate secret is maintaining inner peace. No resentment, no fighting, no tension, no need to prove anything. It's about acting lightly, consistently, and coherently. The person stops wasting energy justifying limits and begins to live according to them. When this happens, emotional clarity increases, the feeling of control grows, and toxic people begin to realize they can no longer manipulate, pressure, or demand. And it is precisely in this silent transition that something very powerful happens. Life begins to respond to your new stance, and the effects appear quickly. When this silent boundary begins to work, the first impact is almost immediate. Toxic people simply distance themselves, not because you argued, not because you gave a speech, but because they no longer find access to cross your boundaries. They realize they can no longer drain your energy, manipulate your emotions, or occupy a space that was once easy. It's as if the door that was always open now has a lock, and only those who truly respect you know how to use it. This change removes a good part of the silent emotional weight you were carrying without realizing it from your life. At the same time, something very curious happens. Balanced people begin to approach you. It's as if your new positioning automatically filters out who stays and who goes. With more calm and less stress, you start having better conversations, lighter relationships, and more genuine exchanges. Your energy, which previously went away on absurd demands, other people's problems, dramas, and invented emergencies, finally stays with you. And with it comes a real increase in clarity. You begin to perceive what you want, what you don't want, who strengthens you and who drains you. Life becomes quieter, but much more intelligent. And then comes the most powerful part, natural respect. Without needing to demand anything, you begin to be seen as someone who knows their own worth. Toxic people can no longer bring you down, and healthy people begin to admire you. You feel in control of your own life because, in fact, you are. Your emotions cease to be open territory and become protected territory. And this creates a new kind of inner strength, a quiet but unbeatable strength that inevitably provokes reactions, especially from people who didn't like these new boundaries at all. Before disappearing completely, toxic people almost always make one last move, trying to pull you back into the old dynamic. It's as if their brain is saying, "Hey, where's that easy access I used to have?" And then the micro-attacks begin, seemingly innocent comments, but full of intent. Phrases like, "You've changed," "You're acting strange," "You're different," emerge as attempts to reinstate the old emotional contract. It's not a compliment, it's provocation. It's a test to see if your boundaries are still firm or if they can manipulate you again. This is the moment when many people give in, but those who understand the game don't back down. This final test phase is usually silent, but emotionally uncomfortable. The toxic person may try to make you feel guilty, nostalgic, responsible, or even doubtful about yourself. They might send long messages reminiscing about old times, invent urgent situations, or even come up with a "I really need you." But none of this is genuine. It's just an attempt to regain the access that the new boundaries took away. It's like a final knock on the door before leaving, and the calmer you remain, the faster this test loses its power. The healthy response here is simple. Maintain boundaries without over-explaining. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove anything. Just continue being consistent with who you've become. Toxic people don't know how to handle the absence of drama. They need it to control you. When they realize you're no longer playing along, they lose interest. And it's at that exact point that your life takes a silent turn, preparing the ground for a conclusion that ties together everything you've learned so far. When someone finally understands the power of this silent boundary, they realize it was never about pushing people away, it was about attracting the right ones. It's almost magical. When you change your energy, you also change who can stay in your life. Toxic people, who constantly overstepped your boundaries, can't stand this new version of you, firmer, more aware, and less available for emotional games. Balanced people, on the other hand, feel this change as an invitation to more genuine relationships. And this exchange creates a kind of natural purification. Everything that doesn't make sense dissolves, and everything that adds value begins to flourish strongly. The most interesting thing is that this process doesn't require anything grandiose. It doesn't need motivational speeches, it doesn't need wars, it doesn't need lengthy explanations. Daily choices are enough, responding calmly, not over-justifying, prioritizing your own peace, saying, "I can't right now," without guilt. These are micro-actions that, when repeated, build a new energy field around you. And it is within this field that life begins to reorganize itself. Relationships become lighter, your mind becomes clearer, your time starts to be more productive. You begin to feel in control, and this becomes evident to everyone around you. And now, with all this in hand, the important question remains. Will you continue to allow your time, your energy, and your limits to be trampled upon? Or will you choose to experience what happens when you put yourself at the center of your own life? Your change begins today, and if you want to take the next step, I've included a video here that delves even deeper into this inner evolution. Just click and watch. And of course, if this content helped you, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue learning and strengthening your vision, your energy, and your limits.